Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Skull.
I'm Zombie Cat.
And this is the Horror Den. Now, today we're doing something a little different, just like we did last week. But this week, we're actually covering our first true animated horror film.
Yeah, we are covering Perfect Blue. This movie came out in 1997. It's a freaking masterpiece. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go watch it right now before watching this review, because we're going to spoil everything and kind of get into some talks, I imagine. So I would definitely recommend go seeing it, because it's something that's going to stick with you for a long time, I imagine.
The movie's runtime is 80 minutes, but it is a dense 80 minutes. It crams a lot in there, but nothing ever feels rushed or anything like that. It's geniusly paced, I believe, throughout the entire movie, kind of giving us a lot of setup to who the characters are and just kind of the story as a whole. There's also a lot of like subliminal messages that are not overt. It's to the point where, our editor or our audio guy DMac back here, he actually requested that we went and watch a explanation video on just some of the main themes afterwards, which I didn't feel like I needed it, but it was nice to just be like, okay, so this is for sure what they were saying. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, let's go into our synopsis of Perfect Blue.
Okay, so our story follows a pop idol named Mima, performing for a pop band named Cham. The movie essentially already starts with the subjects of subverting expectation from reality. We start with like a Super Sentai Power Rangers like opening. It's like a stage play performance version of a TV Power Rangers show, essentially, and we're seeing it like up close. We don't know it's a stage play yet, and then it pulls back and it's a stage play, and kids are like, oh, it's nothing like the TV show. So we're already getting into
it's so cheap.
Yeah, we're already getting into a message of expectation and reality being divided. And Mima, who we are introduced to pretty much right away, they hear that a lot of people are speculating that she's about to retire and change careers, and she's doing her last performance at this small, like, little venue. I don't know what it would be.
It's like a amphitheater.
Yeah, it's very small, but they're apparently they're not big enough to where she's making money that big. That's why she's wanting to change careers. But not money, but more so she wants more than what she has. So she comes out and starts performing with her group some good songs. We're introduced, not really, but we're introduced to a character who we don't know the name of yet, and he's holding the image of Mima in his hand. That's all you see for the moment. He's just holding his hands up, kind of like keeping her center in his hand, seeing that perfect image. He's obsessed with her, is what we're getting to. And
spoiler alert.
There's some rowdy kids who are there just to kind of be jerks, and they're like interrupting the show, and Mima's about to go on about how she's leaving Cham and she's gonna start an acting career, and she hopes that her fans will follow her onto her new pathway. And before she can even get that spilled out, though, a big fight of sodas and snacks starts flying because of the kids, and the creepy dude, he is very haunting. He essentially goes up there and starts fighting these guys. He looks like he's working security or something.
Yeah, it's like he has the armband of concert security.
Yeah.
But this is really bad of me to say, but he kind of reminds me of Sloth from Goonies. Just the way he's drawn, he looks just like him.
Yeah, he's very haunting, though. Like, there's a very menacing aura from his character. And from this point, we go to, I believe she's at her agency, and they're fighting over, you are introduced to her agents. she has one agent named Rumi, who's a bigger character in the film. I can't remember the other guy's name.
It's like Yoko something.
Yeah, something like that. But they're essentially fighting over, she doesn't need to be an actress. You know, Cham was doing great on its own, and
like Rumi's talking about how she can do both, and then the other guy, the main dude, is like, no, because you know the pop star, you can't do both because like it's so hard to place people in today's world like from one to the other. And you know, Rumi's like, well, she came all the way from Tokyo to be a singer. You know, and so like it's kind of like this clear divide between these two important figures in her career path, where it's like Rumi wants her to maintain the roots of her dream that she originally had, while this other guy is like wanting her to fully just invest in her acting career and forget all about being a pop idol.
And that's what she seems to want to do as well.
I think that she's torn.
Yeah, she's torn, but I think that's what she wants to do because she wouldn't have quit otherwise. So we kind of hear that, and she's like, yeah, I'm going to go along with it. I'm going to be an actor. That's what I want to do. And we kind of just get to see her doing mundane stuff. She's out shopping and just living life. We also didn't mention that when she left the concert venue, someone handed her an envelope, and they said, it's something creepy. We were like, run that by me.
Yeah. He's like, I watch Mimi's Room all the time.
Yeah, he's watching Mima's Room all the time. And
Mima, my bad.
We were like, throw that back one more time, what'd you say? She didn't pick it up, I guess. But
no, she picked it up because she responds to it. It's just, we see in the next scene, because she goes home and we get this 4-minute long shot of her just being a normal person, you know, running her bath, just relaxing on her bed after a long day.
We're seeing like a real version of her compared to her onstage performance. Essentially, this is her character development of like, we get to see more of what she's really like. And she opens the envelope, I believe, at this point. I think she's taken down her posters of Cham, like she's not a part of Cham anymore. She's just cleaning, like we were saying. And then I believe she opens the letter, and I think it says what he said. I think it said like, or I think it's a website. It's a website link. That's what it is. It's a website link called Mima's Room, which is scary, but you got to remember this was 1997, so the idea of a website is not really that. There's so many people that don't have internet. It's like what's you know,
I'm not sure if this happens right here, but like she ends up buying a computer and Rumi comes over.
It's this, she's got to go to her acting performance first, and then
we'll
she shows
get to
her
it in just a minute.
So the next day we see her repeating one line. It's something like super small, like I can't remember, but excuse me, who are you? And she's just practicing that one line over and over and over. And she's there with Rumi, and I believe she shows her the letter that she was given, and she's like, oh, this is a website. It's like it's no big deal. People just make websites, whatever. It's the future, what I don't know. But she's like, are you nervous? And she's like, no, she says, yeah, I'm pretty nervous. But she's like, she only has one line, I don't know. And then you see her agents arguing about like, oh, she's a star, we need to get her more screen time. But one of the higher ups, I think it's the director, comes in, or like the
I think they're like producers.
Yeah, one of the I know one's the writer, because he can't figure, he doesn't know how it's gonna end. And one of them is just handing out letters to the actors or whatever, but one of them is pink, and it's to Mima, and Mima is ready to go read her one line. She sits down, and you hear a bomb go off. Essentially, you see one of her agents opening up the letter, and a bomb goes off in his hand. And
we say bomb, but it's a minor explosion, very minor. It's very self-isolated.
But this envelope explodes, and he's just laying on the ground. He's like, I'm okay, even though he's just kind of got blood, but I guess something.
It looks a lot worse than it was.
Yeah, he's on the ground. He's like, I'm fine, but inside of that envelope said the next time won't be.
The next time it'll be real.
Yeah, the next time this will be real, and that's haunting. So, after this, we cut to that night, I believe, or the next day, who knows. And Rumi is setting up Mima's computer for her, and it's a pretty cute scene. It's pretty funny. Rumi's trying to teach her how to open up the web browser, and like she's opening up all these things and setting up her credit card information, blah blah blah. And
she's like, does any of this make sense? Not at all.
Yeah, she's like, repeat it in Japanese. Well, to us it says English, but it's in Japanese. But so she's like, okay, I'll go back from the start, and she teaches her how to do it again. And later, she's punching on her computer. She looks up Mima's room, the website that was sent to her, and it starts off with just like fanboy stuff that you would find on like just a fan site, I guess you could say. Anything like a subreddit, kind of like, it's a little weird, but nothing crazy. But they're like, she takes one step with her left foot first or right foot first because
she knew today was going to be bad because she got off the subway using her left foot first, and she always tries to make a conscious effort to make a right step first.
Yeah, and there's moments she starts it. There's a huge tone change here, and they're like, she was at the grocery store today and she bought this specific brand of milk and this specific brand of food for her fish, and it's like, oh.
somebody is watching her.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like.
Yeah. Okay, so from this point, we cut to another day, and her agents finally got her more screen time, but it's not what we're hoping.
And before this happened, when we get this shot where she's getting on the elevator, and we see the guy from the concert before, the guy who was running security.
Scary guy.
Yeah. And on the inside of the elevator, there's this newspaper like clipping of the kid who caused the disruption has been killed in a hit and run incident. Mm-hmm. And it's this really cool shot where the elevator doors are closing, and she sees him, and he kind of like smiles at her, and then the doors close.
Yeah, and her agents once again are talking about her new role, and the writer's like, well, I hope she's up for it, essentially, kind of implying it's not gonna be any good. But
so the scene in question that the writer has come up with is gonna make her center stage for the second half of this show, and it all starts with basically what is the catalyst for her character, which is her character is a stripper, and she is assaulted by a group of men while she's on stage, which is a big deal, because I mean, they even say that during the filming process, like, you know, I wish we were at a real club, but none of the clubs would let us do it once they heard what we were doing. And we get this scene where her agents are fighting amongst each other, where it's like, she cannot do this. Rumi is like adamant that she cannot do this. You know, this is going to ruin her image and everything like that. And, you know, Mima's over there just like staring down at the floor. And then she finally, through the arguing, she's like, I'll do it. I'm an actor. You know, this is what I signed up for. I will go through with it. And then we get to the scene, and it's rough.
Yeah, it doesn't hold anything back, but it's a very powerful scene, and like showing the complete change in this person, essentially.
Luckily, we never branch into where it feels like what is happening is real, but it makes us uncomfortable enough with the implied what is happening. Mm-hmm. We see it all, obviously, but it's like there's this really human moment that I really appreciated, where the actor who is doing the act, they're told to hold positions while they move the camera, and he's like, "I am so sorry," and she's like, "No, it's okay." Like, I was genuinely appreciative that they put that in that scene, because it really, like, it makes us as the audience go, okay, so what we are watching is not real, it's simply implied.
Yeah.
And it just kind of reassures us just this early on, this, like, we're not anything crazy just yet, just you're gonna be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And at this point, I know she goes back to her office. This might have been earlier in the movie, but Cham released one of their singles, and it has skyrocketed to like 83rd on like the Billboard, which is pretty big. And
Top 100.
yeah, and this all happened as soon as she left, and they became a duo instead of a trio. And she's kind of like holding it back, and this is the first, maybe not the first time, but one of the times we see a doppelganger almost of Mima, and it's basically taunting her, saying, "This is the real you." Like,
I will not go through with it.
Yeah.
It's right before the scene in question.
Mm-hmm.
She's on the subway and she sees in her own reflection her pop idol version of herself, and it's like, I refuse to do it. And like, that's kind of the first little taste of that we get. But the scene goes over, it's over with and done, thankfully.
Thankfully.
I mean, luckily, it's really the most uncomfortable scene in the entire movie.
It is.
Not in terms of horror, but just in terms of like morals. You're just sitting there like, eesh, I kind of want to look away.
The nature of what's going on.
Well, yeah.
Would make anyone like a skin roll.
But it turns out that like the whole idea for the show is that her character, because of this incident, kind of like has this psychotic break where she can't determine between herself and this other personality that she makes up. But that gets expanded upon later in the movie.
And then cutting forward just a little bit, we enter one of the scariest moments in the movie, I'd say. The writer, we just cut to him in a parking garage, pulling in, going home, I'm assuming, and he steps out of his car and he hears Cham playing somewhere in the parking garage, but he doesn't know where from. He's kind of just walking, and he turns around and he's like, "Is somebody there?" And the music stops, and then he starts walking again, and the music turns back on again, and he hits the elevator door, and we get some very horrifying music throughout this movie that reminds me of, like, God, almost like Antrim styled music, just that unsettling, like, I don't know, but it's freaky. The elevator comes to his floor, the parking garage, and it opens, and it's just a CD radio just sitting in the middle of the elevator playing Cham on it, and the next shot proceeds to be the elevator opening on his floor with his eyes completely just gouged out and bleeding and stabbed.
And there's blood all over the inside of the
yeah,
elevator.
it is gruesome. It's pretty scary. And then the next day, or I don't remember if it was the next day. I know, that's the second guy that gets killed when they're all in a panic.
Yeah, well, in this one, it's like everybody's like, "Oh my God, did you hear what happened?" Like, well,
Yeah.
I don't know. So we're gonna be a little choppy. We're not gonna be deep diving in every aspect of this movie like this movie deserves, because it's really good. But like always, we're gonna miss something. But essentially, what is happening right now is like there's a little bit of kind of like just apprehension about what's going on, and then like this is when things start to become a little bit unglued, where she's starting to see this doppelganger of herself more often.
Yeah, she has a full-blown breakdown in her room. Like, she sees her doppelganger in her computer or her TV saying, like, "I'm the real Mima once again," like, and then she throws her pillow at it, and it disappears, but she starts just destroying her room and sobbing, being like, of course I didn't want to do it. Like, that was freaking awful. Like, like the world is gonna see me as that now. It's scary.
And every once in a while, we get these shots of her stalker, the dude, sitting in like a computer room, like on this website. And we assume that he's the one that's posing as Mima on the website.
Yeah, when he talks, it's with Mima's voice. It's so scary.
Right. It's like he's mouthing what he's typing. But basically, that kind of starts happening more and more. She gets invited to do this photo shoot with this well-known photographer, but he's known for making his models pose nude. And like her former bandmates are making fun of her, and it's like, oh, I bet she can't wait to bear it all, you know. And Rumi comes in, is like, shouldn't you girls be getting ready?
Yeah.
You know, kind of snapping at them. And you know, she does the photo shoot, and this is when things start to blend between what's real and what's not. Because 1 minute we'll get a shot of like the photo shoot, 1 minute we'll get a shot of her waking up in her bedroom, and we'll get another shot of her like at the studio recording something, and then like it'll loop back at unexpected moments.
It's so well executed. Like, you feel insane watching this beginning of the third act almost. Like, you're with her. You're just like, you're going through these processes, and then it resets, and then it processes, and then resets, and you're like, what's even real anymore? Like, I'm not me, essentially.
And through most of this movie, we see Mima through, like, we get this intimate view of her, like, as her public persona and as her quiet in her own home persona. So we get to know both aspects of her. While there are scenes where we see her through the eyes of other people, and that, you know, kind of sways our, like, view of her in that moment. And it's really, like, genius the way that it's all put together and things like that. She's still seeing her stalker everywhere, like, and she's not sure if he's actually there or not.
Hallucinating him a lot, and we also follow him a good bit, and you see like characters being like, oh, she's in nude magazines now and stuff like that, and they're kind of just laughing about it. Like,
her stalker's not happy about that.
Yeah, he I can't remember what he does.
He goes to the like this bookstore, and he like grabs everybody's copies and like buys them all and takes them back, and there's just these mountains of magazines in his room that he's sitting there with. And at this point he gets he's doing like a post, and he's talking about how there's this imposter Mima out there, and that it's not really Mima that's doing these things, and that this false Mima is in her way and needs to be taken care of. And so now we get this idea that the stalker...
There's a final piece of text that pops up in subtitles, and it's like, I'll take care of it, essentially. Like, I'll get rid of her.
And so now we are expecting that the stalker has now focused his attention on Mima herself. And we get this really cool scene. It's the most brutal death in the movie.
It's terrible what happens, but the animation in this scene is gorgeous. It's so gorgeous.
The photographer that took the photos of her, he gets a pizza delivery, and the pizza person drops the pizza and is like, wow, you're a weird pizza delivery person. And he bends over to grab it, and the person pulls out an ice pick from behind him and just goes to town.
Straight. The first one, he digs under his eye and freaking just whoosh, straight into his eye. And he, of course, starts freaking running and closes the door behind him. Once again, God, the animation is gorgeous. It stabs through the glass, getting to him and just kind of like pounding on him, and then he's running away some more, and once again, an amazing shot. Mima is standing in the frame. He was watching a movie, I believe. He was watching like the reels of the film they were filming or whatever, and it was Mima's face like just soaked in blood, and you see the killer coming up on top of him and basically starting to stab him to death. And as the hood falls off, it's Mima underneath the hood, stabbing him to
And
death.
so now we are starting to question on, is Mima the one that's behind all of this? Is there actually like a doppelganger situation happening where she has multiple personalities, just like her character in the show? And so it's that compounded with her losing her grasp on who she is, battling with this former image of herself and who she is trying to become and who she is when she's by herself. And, you know, the introduction of the internet, which, you know, is such a genius aspect, because this is before we all had like our own little persona that we put on. You know, because the YouTuber that we watched do a deep dive, you'll have to tell SmiteLad his name and put it up here for but he said, you know, like, the person that you think you know that does these YouTube videos, like, this isn't me, this is all blah 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 blah. And I really appreciated that.
Like, to our audience, it's like, you know us here, but you don't know us, you know what I mean? It's like, that's the perception this movie is really starting to dive towards, is like, this stalker has, well, we'll get to it when it's revealed.
But, you know, so the photographer's dead now. Everybody's kind of like, does she have something to do with it? Well, you know, if something bad happens twice, it's going to happen thrice. And so everybody's kind of anticipating that this is going to be bad. And she is officially like losing it. And so she gets like multiple things that are not real in her visions. And then finally we get to the scene where it's like, it's a wrap on production.
Yeah, and it's a very good fool, because for a second you're like, was this all like a TV show or something? Because they're standing being like, Mima's character has disassociation disorder, like where she's a separate person essentially.
All of a sudden you think that this whole thing has been like a criminal investigation and like Mima is the crazy one. Like, you really think that for just for a second, but then they fool you and they show you what was actually played back, and they change around words.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you motherfuckers.
Yeah. When she's first looking into the mirror at herself, she's like, I'm an actor. But then when it's played back, it's, I'm a model. It's like, oh my God. And then they wrap filming. It's done, everyone's cheering and applauding, and they're kind of just making their way out, celebrating. Everyone's in a good mood,
Going to the rap party.
And Mima, I can't remember what she had to
She's going back to her dressing room to get ready.
Yeah, she's going to get ready. Rumi's with her and her other agent. She goes into this dressing room, and she's not in the dressing room, she's going down a hallway, and we see the creep just slowly and menacingly trotting his way down. And he very quickly starts trying to kill her.
What? I think he's trying to do something else first.
Oh yeah, but I mean, he's coming at her with a knife.
We get a full recreation of the uncomfortable scene from earlier, but in this instance, she fights back.
Yeah, and it's kind of revealed. He's like, I'm not going to let you ruin Mima's real image.
Yeah, the real Mima emails me all the time.
Yeah, and he's got a knife, and he stabs it beside her head, and I think she's injured at this point. I think he might have got her a few times, but he starts ripping off her clothes, and we're just like, oh no.
Oh.
But
she during the chase sequence, like, they go behind this like panel where there's like these lights, and she gets pushed and it falls, and he's tying her down with these like straps, and while he's tying up her legs, she reaches over from this tool belt, grabs this giant hammer, and just boom right in the side of his temple. And for the second I thought it was an axe, and I thought that it got stuck, you know, like Jason Voorhees style. And there's just an awkward pause, and then all of a sudden he's like,
yeah.
And then he falls over, and I think he's dead.
Yeah, he is dead, 100% dead.
Well, I don't think he was. I think he was unconscious.
He was, because of what happened. I remember that.
No, we're about to get into something else. Because, okay, anyway. So, Rumi, who's been staying at the car, comes in to find her, finds her disheveled in the hallway. They go to see the body. It's gone. And she's like, am I losing my mind? And she's like, well, let's go. Mm-hmm. And she's in the car and they're driving away when Rumi says, and I quote, we're going to the room.
Mm-hmm.
And like the website room. Like that's what she says.
Yeah.
We're going to Mima's room is exactly what she says. And then it cuts away and we see in this back, well, she's trying to call her agent, the other one. And we see this back room shot at the filming studio. And we see the eyeless body of her other agent and the bloodied dead body of her stalker.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't think he was dead, because I think that he was killed while he was unconscious.
Okay.
And then drug over there.
Yeah.
So we wake up and we're in Mima's apartment. But she gets up and she realizes that this is a perfect recreation of her apartment. This is not her apartment.
Yeah, she looks out her window and she sees a train going by, and we've seen outside of her apartment multiple times at this point, so we know it's not hers. And she turns around and sees herself in her Cham outfit, and her poster is hanging up on her wall.
That she took down earlier.
And we see Rumi is dressed up as Mima, and it's really well shot. Like, you could see the reflection is Rumi, but the physical form is Mima. It's so cool.
Yeah, the shots are done so where we're seeing through Mima's eyes, where she is seeing herself, like the personification of her pop idol self. But when we the audience see like reflections and moments of like reality, we see that it's Rumi.
Yeah, so
which is really well done.
It's revealed she was also insane this whole entire, which is so creepy.
And it turns out that she's the one that's been killing these people.
Yeah.
The stalker was literally just a pawn that was being used to try to off Mima. That was it.
And it makes it so much creepier too, especially on a rewatch, because you're like, it's that, do you really know anybody? You know what I mean? It's like, this was her like mentor, her best friend throughout the movie, and she was a psycho, no different than the stalker.
Right.
She's worse than him.
But a fight ensues.
Yeah.
And like pretty much she's chased like down throughout the streets. And then finally we get a recreation of a shot from earlier where Mima in like a daze, like in one of her psychotic episodes, like she's in front of a truck and it's gonna hit her before she wakes up.
Also
but this
implying the crazy dude did probably kill the
maybe
hit and
we
run,
don't know,
because that's why he would put that there.
Yeah. But we get a recreation of that, but it's the false Mima, Rumi, who is like in front of this truck and she stands and she's about to like sacrifice herself when Mima tackles her out of the way, and you know the driver stops and it's like, we gotta call a hospital, call the police, call everybody. And then finally it fades to black and we fade up and we see Mima in a insane asylum.
Yeah.
But then it turns to Rumi, and like we see that Rumi is in an insane asylum and she's been given these flowers, and she looks at her reflection and she sees the pop idol version of Mima that she has idolized this whole time, and we see the real Mima is standing over there in a pair of sunglasses, and she's like,
they talk about her diagnosis and how she's been doing. They're like, sometimes even the real Rumi comes out and she's not Mima anymore. It's very haunting. But
yeah, she says, well, Mima says, I know I'll never see her again.
Yeah. And she goes out to her car and there's some nurses like gossiping, being like, is that Mima? Why would she be here? That's insane. And they're like, no, it's probably just a lookalike.
And she gets in the car and she looks in the rear view and says, no, it's the real me.
Yep, a great it's actually a happy ending. I mean,
Yeah, I was so shocked when I tell you I did not think that this was going to have a good ending.
yeah, so a very good ending. So that's great.
I know that we did not do this movie justice, so I highly recommend you go check it out. It's only like $13 on Apple, and I'm sure you can watch it somewhere else.
Yeah.
But highly recommend it. This is not my normal bag. This is straight up Zombie Cat's alley.
Yeah.
You know, like I am into anime just like DMac and Zombie Cat, but this is only something that they would recommend me. Would I ever watch this? But highly recommend it. Go watch it for yourself and enjoy the experience of it just as it's totally his.
Yeah. There's so much to take in with this movie. I was telling them like how people have deep dived and found all this cool stuff with when you time certain events that happen in the movie, like with the radio in the elevator, and how there's red only when there's like vibrant red when only something serious is about to happen. Something serious or violent is about to occur. That happens like 3 to 4 times in the movie, I believe. So it's really cool. It's like with the guy we were watching on YouTube was also talking about the color saturations and how it like just goes from like kind of warm and cool colors to where and then it goes to like just jarring bright colors at times, and it's like just representing this harsh change and everything. And so there's just it's like The Shining. You could talk about it for hours.
Yeah, this movie is all about, you know, struggling with your own identity and also like the perception of yourself versus what you portray to the world, and also it expands upon the idea of what other people view you as, like you know, how you're seen from the general public and those that are closest to you even. And it's really interesting. I cannot recommend it enough. So
yeah, so it's like even the creep, it's like he had this perfect image of her. She was who she was on stage, and that's it. And apparently Rumi thought that way too. She is her as a pop star, and that's it. It's just a lot. It's a lot to dive into. Like, we could make a whole separate video just freaking diving into this movie.
And maybe one day we will. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
come back and do a revisit. But, you know, without further ado, because we could sit here and keep going, but we know why you're here. So go watch the movie. But without further ado, let's get into our scoring. So, like always, we start off with story. I'm going to hand it over to Zombie Cat to give the first score.
For this story, it's so deep and lands so perfect for me. Like, it's genuinely a classic masterpiece. Like, maybe a few things here and there kind of jank, so I'm gonna give it a 9. Like, I could almost give it a 10. It's like kissing it, but there's just a few things that maybe kind of hinder it down just a pinch, but it's damn near perfection. It gets an easy 9, and how deep the meaning is and how you have to just like think about it. It's not something you can just watch and expect to understand immediately.
I'm also giving it a 9. This is not my normal bag, but I am definitely going to buy it. I'm definitely going to watch it again for myself. I'm definitely going to recommend it to other people. I'm genuinely just surprised with this movie.
I told you, man, it's a lot. It's one of those movies that just sticks with you. You'll pick up things and you're just like, oh my God.
See, I would love to go back in time and like erase my memory and like go back to 1997 and watch it when it came out, because I bet this was like groundbreaking.
And just like the guy we were talking about, this movie feels scarier in present day more than it did probably in 97, because now people can so easily find everything about you. It's terrifying.
Well, everything about you.
Yeah, what your persona is, what Mima's persona was. That's what they could find, and that's what they saw her as.
Right. So we both give it a 9, so it's a 9 overall. Moving on to characters, I think that the characters are well developed, especially Mima, obviously. I think that even though we don't get a lot of the perspective on the other characters, I feel that we know who they are.
Yeah.
Or at least who their archetypes are. So I think that lends itself to the scoring. Do I think it's a 10? No, but I think it's up there.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna give it a 9. Also, with just who we were talking about, we were watching his recap on the movie, essentially kind of breaking things down. I love the detail of animation being used differently for certain characters. This movie's not styled like a typical 90s anime with huge eyes and bright colors. It kind of makes everyone who's normal look ugly, but people that are viewed in a higher standard look gorgeous and beautiful, like Mima and her like partners, singing partners and stuff like that. The actors, they're all like handsome and beautiful, but when you see a human, they're just kind of like poorly animated.
Human.
Yeah, just a standard civilian. They look way more just bland. It's so cool. Like, that's a really cool detail.
Am I the only person that now every time I hear the word human, I think of Psycho Gorman?
Human. So yeah, the characters are freaking phenomenal, especially Mima. She's God. You feel like you go through a journey with her throughout this whole movie. And Rumi was great. The creep is great, and he barely says anything. That's what's so amazing. It's like, holy shit, just very good.
I'm also giving characters a 9. Surprised that we are like consistently going up this high, but I don't think it's perfection. But I think it could have been. Like, I mean, I don't know how they could have done it, but I think somebody out there, when they watch this, they'll give characters a 10.
Oh yeah, easily.
So that's a 9 overall for characters. Moving on to antagonists. Now, when we're talking about antagonists, we are factoring in the creep as well as Rumi.
Yeah.
Which, for that reason, I'm giving them a 9.
Yeah, like, it's also a 9 for me. Like, the antagonist is almost, in this movie, it's different from another movie you would probably watch with this same story because it's not executed the same. It's like, with this, it makes you look at Rumi and the stalker as like, just, it's, you can't explain it. It's hard to explain. It's like just entities. It's so crazy. It's, I don't know.
What I appreciate so much about the antagonist is that we have the obvious one, and it's the portrayal of it is very iconic and memorable and will stick with you. However, the whole twist that Rumi is the whole person behind it the whole time, I never saw it coming.
And there's signs throughout the movie.
I mean, I'm sure there is, but I never saw it coming.
Remember when they were making fun of Rumi while the two other girls were like, oh, and then she's like, hey, quit.
Yeah. Which, you know, if you're, as a first-time watcher, you're just like, oh, this is just an overprotective friend.
She's just
agent.
upset that she's doing this.
Yeah,
It makes you look at the scene of her crying because she's doing this in a different light. It's like,
I think that might be like when the tipping point for her really was.
like, that's not the Mima I know.
Just like that illustrates her transitioning from pop star into actress, that is also Rumi's transition from stable to not stable.
Yeah.
So antagonist gets a 9. We're up to 3 9s already.
Yeah.
Now, time for something completely different. Come into humor. This is not a funny movie.
Yeah, there's nothing funny outside of some of the bad English dubbing. Like, the dubbing is fine. It's good enough. It's something I'm always picky on, but it's mostly
I didn't notice.
It's mostly perfect, but there's just moments like when the creep gets smacked in the head, it's a little bit of a whoa. It sounds a little goofy.
Yeah, his voice is super weird.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess he's a basement nerd, so I guess at the same time it fits.
It's like fitting, yeah. It's just like not what I expected. I thought it was gonna be way more creepy and not like a total geek.
It makes sense though, you know. It's,
Yeah.
no offense to geeks, we are too. Not like that, but we're nerds. We're huge nerds. But
So yeah, this is not a funny movie at all. And for that reason, I'm debating giving it a 0.
yeah, like I said, the only thing that was funny was kind of some of the weird dubbing. But for me, I just like. I mean, we don't do 0. We go 1 to 10, so it gets a 1.
Okay, 1. You know, it's the lowest we can possibly give it. There was nothing intentionally funny about this movie.
And it's a great thing because that doesn't fit into this movie at all. So.
And there's a very happy energy around Mima, it's a very dark, seedy kind of feeling of a story, and so I really enjoyed it. So it gets a 1 in terms of humor.
Yeah.
Now moving on to scariness. This is going to be interesting. So Zombie Cat, you take over.
This movie really gets under my skin. Once again, it's a movie I'm gonna be thinking about for days again because I just watched it again. It's gonna get an 8 for me. Just like the genuine like feeling of insanity, like just the small details of like the camera. It might make you a little nauseous. Warning, if you watch this movie, the camera is constantly wobbling, but that's to show the sanity of Mima, which is another really fucking cool detail. But it's like you just feel like you're in this world with her, and you're just like looping through these days of like, what is real, what is real, what is real, and then the threat of just that. It's so creepy. Like I said, seeing it a second time and knowing who Rumi was and picking up on these details of, oh, that's so because it's so real. It could happen so easily. Not to this like exaggerated extent of a psychological horror.
Look, sometimes reality is more fantastical than fantasy.
Yeah. So for me, I'm gonna give it an 8 because this movie's not a traditional scary, but a scary that gets under my skin, which is up my alley.
Wow. So I agree with you. This is not a traditional kind of scary.
No.
However, with my scoring, I was not thinking about how much this scared me. I was thinking about I kind of had to rely on the fact of like, oh, I'm cheering for this main character to come out the other end okay. And I was at the edge of my seat, like wanting them to succeed. Not so much like buried, because I never felt that way entirely like that with that movie. The only other movie that I've ever felt close to this is Misery, which we will cover soon. But with this one, I was constantly like, okay, I want to see this end well for her. And like this whole like constant wish-wash in the brain of like, what is going on, who is the main antagonist, like who is behind everything. That aspect, I have to agree with you. I am also giving it an 8.
Yeah, it's great. It's a different kind of scary.
It's not shit your pants scary.
No, it gets under your skin. It's a very real scary almost.
So for the first time ever, I think we agree on scariness.
Yeah, fucking phenomenal.
So that's an 8 for scariness. Moving on to experience. How we felt about the movie as a whole.
Like I said, nitpicks here and there just from me, but God, I want to give it a 10 so bad, but it's like when I think of what have I given a 10 on this channel before?
An experience? Nothing.
I feel like I might have.
You've given Jason Voorhees a 10.
Yeah.
An antagonist.
You know what? This movie's just so fucking timeless and classic and scarier and it's aged like wine. Because at the time, once again, it's like, at the time, maybe we were like, computers aren't really the future, you know, it's just like a toy almost, but now that it's so real and can so easily happen, and just the flow of everything in this movie, I think I'm just gonna give it a 10 because I can't think of why not. It's just so fucking good. This movie is genuinely amazing.
I am giving it a 9. I hate to break our possible like even match on everything. The reason I'm giving it a 9 is simply because this is not my normal bag, which doesn't mean that it doesn't warrant a 10, but for me personally, whenever somebody asks me like, what is the most iconic movies in horror for you, this is not going to be on that list for me. So that's why I can't give it a 10. No offense to the movie. Like, I mean that because I'm giving it a 9. Like, that means it's high up there.
Yeah, which in my book, I completely see this as a horror classic. It's not a typical horror classic, though. Yeah. It's not like when you're asking somebody, what's a classic horror, you're going to say Friday the 13th, Jaws, The Shine, whatever. But it's like, when someone mentions something like this, they'd probably be like, what's that? You know?
Yeah, this is a movie I only heard about 2 or 3 months ago when Zombie Cat texted me.
Yeah,
You need to watch this movie.
It's genuinely fucking amazing.
In my opinion, I would feel more comfortable giving a 10 to the story of this movie than the experience.
Yeah.
Just because of how geniusly crafted it is. That's why I'm giving it a 9. I can think of some reasons to not give it a 10 for me personally. I can see easily at least majority, if not all of the audience that watches this disagreeing with me, and that is perfectly okay.
I mean, I say if you give it 9 to 10,
well,
that's damn near perfect.
You know, so do not take my scoring slightly lower that I do not think it deserves a 10. It does. It's just for me personally, it doesn't land in that category. And some of the iconic horror movies that he named don't land in that for me either. So, but anyway, so that is a 9.5 for experience. You can't get much higher than that.
No.
Overall, I think that this might be our highest rated movie that we've reviewed so far. Great way to, be still in the first half of 2025, and we're covering some really good stuff. Mm-hmm. And we have some big movies coming this way. We're just trying, we spent the whole first year of our channel just kind of like trying to reserve some things, but we're just like, you know what? We're going to tackle some big name horror real quick. So, I hope you're ready for that. I hope you're enjoying all of our videos. If you are watching this and you want to stay up to date, just please check our channel. We post every Friday at around the 6 to 7 range. We're having some issues like that, but we won't go into much detail. Go check out our post on our media.
Yeah, just if you could, leave a like, subscribe, comment to let us know that you're seeing this video. That would be helpful. Turn on notification bell. It would help us tremendously because we think we got some account stuff going on.
But we respond to everybody.
Yeah.
I respond on my personal YouTube channel. Our editor responds on his. Zombie Cat responds through our official RichaadEB channel.
Yeah.
We will interact with our community, so please come down, have a conversation with us. If you have any recommendations for any movies you want us to cover in the near future, let us know. We have 2 different examples of the fact that we listen.
Yeah.
So just if you have something you want us to watch, just leave it a few times over the course of the next couple weeks in our videos, and we will make a note of it and we will talk to you about it.
Yep.
So we have an Instagram. We are picking that back up. I think we're going to be picking up even more now with recent events and stuff. But if you want to go ahead and go follow us and keep up to date on all of our real world antics and even hear about upcoming videos, head over to @the channel on Instagram. We also have a Patreon.
Yeah, you can subscribe to our Patreon for as low as $5 a month. We currently have 3 patrons. Here are their beautiful names, and you can also have your name up at the end of all of our videos for, once again, low as $5 a month. We're a few weeks away now, just a few weeks now, from getting a capture card for our Twitch/YouTube streaming. It's going to be exciting. It's a whole new can of worms for us to open up and hopefully expand our horizons. So.
Yeah, and that'll give us an opportunity to delve into a new aspect of media for all of you watching at home, and also it kind of gives a week for our editor to take a well-deserved week off.
Yep.
So because like we always say, we all do this out of our free time. We all work full-time jobs, and sometimes a lot of this workload falls on our editor, which we're not getting paid for this, so we're all struggling together, but doing this with our Patreon will definitely help lighten the load a little bit. Mm-hmm. So we hope that you're enjoying all of our videos coming out. Hope you go follow us on Instagram, go support us on Patreon if you like to, but more importantly than anything else, stay spooky out there.